Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Fits here in Blackstone, Virginia, the center of the world. But then you too are at the center of the world if you make the shift. That's the title of today's talk. Make the shift to the center. Make the shift to the center. Where do you shift from? The rim. Look at a wheel. So you got the periphery and you got the center. We live on the periphery. In our modern society, the consciousness of the modern society, which really was kind of born with the age of, call it the age of enlightenment, after the 16th century, the Middle Ages ended and the age of reason began. The Middle Ages was an age of faith, and then the age of reason began. And the age of reason created the world we live in now, as we see it, the way we see the world. And the way we see the world is like a mechanic. The world, we can fix the world. You can fix yourself, go see a therapist, take some yoga, study some Zen. Fix yourself, you see, or fix the world. Or, in other words, the whole idea of the modern mind is we can fix the world. Other societies didn't think that way. This is a new way of thinking, and it's spreading. It's spreading over the globe. This Western idea or belief that But you can't fix something unless you're outside of it. In other words, the surgeon operates on a body, not on himself. The mechanic operates on a machine, not on himself, you see. So the mechanic and the surgeon are outside of what they operate on, which is the world. This is a viewpoint. This is a viewpoint that we don't even question because it's a fish. It's like we're swimming in this fishbowl. We're swimming in this consciousness like a fish swims in a fishbowl. And the fish can't question the fishbowl because he's in it. But the fishbowl shapes the water. The fishbowl shapes the water of the world that the fish swims in. You see? So the viewpoint you have shapes the water of consciousness. Consciousness is like water. We swim in it. Birds fly in the air. Fish swim in water. Humans live or swim in consciousness. This is our baby. And it has a shape. And we can't see the shape. So reality has no shape, you see. This is what Zen Buddhism is all about. You can't know reality because it has no shape. If it has a shape, you're outside of it. For anything to have a shape, for you to see the shape, you have to be outside of it. If you're in it, you can't see it. So we can't see the shape of reality because we are reality. You see, so in order to know reality, we'd have to be outside of reality, and that's absurd. So we're kind of like looking at this. The title of this talk is shift to the center. Make a shift to the center. So this anyway, my first post this morning, actually, first message I got this morning was from some friend who really appreciated yesterday's talk and how it helped her make a shift. She suddenly was seeing things differently because we were talking about yesterday. I was talking about this shift to the center, how we can really experience. You can work with it yourself in your own house. And the metaphor I used yesterday, which really is very helpful, is the difference between a flat map, atlas map, and a GPS navigator. Now, the flat map is the way we look at the world in our common sense. You see, common sense is not questioned. We just say, oh, that's common sense. It's common sense that the world exists outside of me, and I'm in the world, and I walk around on a flat map. In other words, the world is constant, and I'm in it, and I stay in it for a lifetime, and then I drop out. But the world stays the same. We say that's common sense. We don't question that, but we don't question it because it's a fishbowl. It's a viewpoint that really was born or created, or not that it was created, but it became the dominant viewpoint with the age of science, because the scientific viewpoint is the scientist is outside of reality, so he can experiment on it and work on it, find its laws. He can work like a machine, you see. Quantum and Zen and Buddhism smashed or questioned that viewpoint. So it began to question whether our way of knowing reality is absolute or is it just a viewpoint? And if it's a viewpoint, then there are other viewpoints. So what I'm talking about today is that the shift to the center is a shift in viewpoint. So we're just conditioned. We don't question the viewpoint from the periphery. This really started my spiritual journey, because particularly when you get to puberty, when you get to adolescence, you're very, very sensitive to being on the outside of your peer group. They'll say, "Oh, the movies are made of this. Oh, the in group over there. The kids. The in group, the in girls, the in guys. And there's the story of who's outside. He wants to be in, but he's frozen out. So he creates his own little group of outsiders. And that's what I did in school. I would create friends with outsiders, so the outsiders, you see, could form an outsider. And in adolescence, these outsiders can become gangs. Like what is the Wild Ones? With Marlon Brando. That was a movie of the motorcycle gang who were the outsiders, and they were like Vikings, and they would attack the civilization, and Trump is an outsider. Trumpism, Trumpers are an outsider group that formed a group to attack the liberals, the insiders, the mainstream, you see. So this is a mythology. I mean, this is a way of viewing, and it's everywhere if you get the key and you get the way to look at it, But anyway, I'm trying to tie this together here. The shift to the center is a shift in viewpoint from being on the outside looking in, not to being on the in group, but to see everything from the creative center. It's very difficult to explain. I was writing about it. Today is Joseph Campbell's birthday. And I spent my life reading Joseph Campbell. First encountered him in 1970. Read his books over and over. Still encountered Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell looked at mythology from the center. Instead of looking at it as a bunch of fragments, every culture having its own mythology, you see, suddenly he awakened to the point that he was seeing mythology from the inside, and therefore he could integrate all the different mythologies as the axis or hub of a wheel integrates the spokes, you see. When we look at the world from the outside, all we see is my group, my way of looking, and your group and your way and my way are threatening, so I got to change your way, you see. In other words, it's a war of spokes. To use the wheel, the war of spokes, you see. There can only be one center, but when I am looking at the world from the outside, I'm going to get in a viewpoint or a group to affirm my viewpoint, my world, you see. And then that is like I create a fishbowl or a bubble, and now all these other bubbles are floating around, and I'm going to have to go to war with them because there can only be one center. And yet now everybody's calling to be the center. This is what's happening today. Everybody says, "Oh, well, I got my truth is the truth. You're just an opinion." So like everybody's got the absolute opinion, and everyone else is, well, you have the right to have an opinion, but my opinion is the center. So everybody wants to be the center, you see. But that's a view from the outside. It's a view of looking at other worlds, it's very difficult to explain. Anyway, the shift to the center is a shift to having no viewpoint. But that's a creative way of knowing. When you're at the center, you are at a creative center of the world, and then everything suddenly fits in your reality, because in a wheel that has a axis, all of the spokes fit. They all point to a center, but the center is empty. Now, if you say, I am at the center, I am, my ego is the center, well, now you have just become the center of a little wheel that is at war with all the other wheels. You see, so in other words, keeping with this analogy here of the wheel, if you have the sense of a permanent self, you have that sense of a permanent self, which we call the ego. Sense of self creates the sense that the world is out there separate from you. This is the same creation. If when I create or have a sense of a separate self, a sense of separation, that sense of separation from the world creates the world. They rise together. I and it rise together, you see. But when the I is empty, what happens to the it? There is no it. Now you have become a dynamic center. Now you have become you could say it was a shift from the head to the heart. Now you have become an empty center that is absolutely creative. In other words, instead of seeing the world as a fixed war between I and it, now the world becomes creative. And everything you encounter then is integrated or created into a whole. So everything fits when you're at the center. No matter what you encounter, everything fits. It doesn't mean everything fits around you. It means that the world itself is one. That reality is one. But you can't know it, because if you knew it, you'd be on the outside of it. So this shift to the center, from the periphery to the center, really, is a shift from... it's so difficult to explain. I'm sorry. This is shifting to the center means is a creative way of always knowing that everything fits, even though I forget it. I'm going to just have to leave it there. The shift to the center is a shift in the way of knowing the world, from being a fragmented world where nothing fits to being an integrated world where everything you encounter fits creatively. In other words, you're creating a world that fits rather than being in a world. You are the center of the world as a creator. You create the world you live in. But that doesn't mean you create the stars and the sun and all that. No, 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 that's not it. That misses the mark, you know. You're creating the world that you are. You are the world, and the world is you. That's a shift. Krishnamurti used to say that you're the world and the world is you. That's a shift to the center, but not a shift of the ego. Oh, I'm the world, you see. It's not that at all. It's the end of the ego, or the sense of separation. Anyway, thanks for dropping in. Sorry for all the